Hello everyone, welcome to this crowdcast with SmartCat Academy. Today with us is, as usual, Una Dimitrievich and me, Vova, the head of community at SmartCat. Hi Una, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Boba?
I'm great too. Summer is finally in town here in Russia. What about France?
It comes and it goes. We've had really hot periods, and then today we had a shower storm. So luckily, we don't have all the thunder to accompany us in the webinar today. That's gone now.
Okay, yeah, let's hope it will not go. So today we will be talking about presenting yourself to clients, and it is also our last webinar in a series with Una, because most of you guys, as I can see in the polls, most of you have already seen other webinars. So we will take a break for summer vacation, at least Una will, and then we will come back. But Una, you can tell it better. Tell us what we will be talking about today and everything you want to tell us.
Okay, perfect. Well, once again, thanks so much for hosting SmartCat, as always. As you said, it's the last little series of webinars that we've done. I think it's the 8th. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm a French to English translator, and I also coach aspiring translators to help them quickly develop a successful freelancing career. And it's in this scope that I started developing these webinars with SmartCat, because I really wanted to create something that would have helped me when I was just starting out myself as a freelancer not that long ago. So if you haven't seen the other webinars that are available, there's a whole bunch of them linked on my website if you want to check them out, because I think there's a lot of questions that some of you might have about working with agencies and clients that we've already addressed in previous webinars. So hopefully this is going to be useful to you in the webinar we're about to do about how to present yourself to clients. And if you have more specific questions, then by all means, during your summer vacation, go back and look at the other webinars that we've done.
Okay, so shall we start then? And shall I focus on the presentation?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Thanks for the link. Yeah, there's that link to the other webinars if you guys want to check them out. Okay, perfect. So what are we going to talk about today? Let's see. First of all, let's go back. How to approach real-life networking. Then we're going to talk about how to present yourself in 10 seconds, whether in person, over the phone, and then also about your CV and your cover letter, how best to create these when you're reaching out to agencies and to clients. And we'll end with a few more pointers. So let's just jump straight into this, approaching real-life networking events. So I know that this might seem quite scary for a lot of you. I think that by nature as translators, we're often shy people. We can be introverted, and going out there and meeting new people is a little bit frightening. And we often feel like this little person in the corner of the party playing with a cat, as opposed to speaking to people. And even if we're not particularly introverted, we certainly don't see ourselves as being marketing specialists, and we don't necessarily know how to go about selling our services. So don't worry, you're not the only one who feels like that, and that's the first point. But also what you should think about when you're approaching the idea of networking is that it shouldn't really be about selling your services to start off with. It should be about building relationships. And this is something we actually discussed in the previous webinar that we did about direct clients. We talked about how actually getting a job from a client is something that comes at the end of a very long process of building a relationship of trust with them. So this is what you need to be considering when you delve into this world of real life networking. So here's some of the main points that I would say about approaching real life networking. First of all, broaden your idea of what a networking event might be. You might not pick the right ones at the start. You'll soon find out what's worth it for you and what's not. But networking events can include a lot of different things. A networking event can be a workshop, a seminar, it can be an industry event, but it can be something much smaller. It can be like a small product launch or a gallery opening. And you can also look locally at any events that are run by universities in your area, by associations, co-working spaces, cultural centers, anything like that. And it can also be events that are set up by individuals. And you might want to launch one as well. For example, there's a website called meetup.com, and locally where I live, I run an event for people who work in the languages industry who want to come and just chat about their work. And so you can find about these very small events that are going on websites like meetup.com or Flylancer as well. And so think about a networking event being not necessarily something very formal. It can really be anywhere that you get out of your house and you go to meet potential clients or meet referrers, so people who can talk about your services to others who might want to use them, or just simply meet other freelancers and learn more about working on your own. And you can even start out with something that you're likely to know a few people already, if you find it really scary going somewhere where you don't know anybody at all. And the second point that here is picking an event that's going to be of interest to you. And that's important because even if you leave an event feeling like you didn't make very useful contacts, like this isn't going to lead to a job, at least you've gone somewhere where you've learned something useful about the industry that you want to work in, about the specialization area that you want to focus on. And also look at who's coming to the event. So, for example, you might want to look at who's been invited if there's a guest list, or who is going to have a stall if it's a sales event. I'll look at who's speaking and what topics are going to be covered. And if you can, get individual names. So you can check out people on LinkedIn beforehand. You can look up what people do, find out more about the companies represented, maybe which countries they work in, so that you can figure out if your languages are going to be relevant to the services that they provide. In any case, you really got to actually prepare before you go to any event. And once you are there, once you get the guts and you actually go, analyze the room. So what do I mean by this? First, take your time when you get there, check out the location, do a bit of groundwork before you start actually going up and accosting people. And if you feel nervous about it, you can start by approaching other people who also look shy, who look nervous themselves. And if you don't want to go straight into a pitch about your services, just make chit chat. So talk about the food, talk about the venue, the weather, the next conference that's coming up. Just engage people in conversation. And if you don't see anyone by themselves, you can try joining a group conversation, these kind of networking events. But in that case, try and find a group where there is, for example, an odd number of participants. So you're more likely to be able to come in and interact than in a group where there's an even number. People tend to pair up into twos. And when you do this, just look at the body language of the group. So what I mean by that is simply that if a group is forming a tight circle, they're probably deep in conversation, they're not going to be very open to someone coming in to join them, unlike people who are standing around in a more open shape. They're communicating that, there's space for you to come in and to see what they're talking about. Another point is get to know others first. So start with a question. Show someone that you're listening to what they have to say, that you can ask them for more information about what they do. Remember that networking shouldn't be about selling your services to everybody you meet. At least it's not going to be the first step. Networking is going to be about building a relationship with the person you're talking to. And if you take an interest who they are, you're going to make them feel valued. So you start by getting the conversation to actually revolve around the other person, get them to talk about what they love, get them to talk about what they do. And then they're more likely to show an interest in you afterwards. After they've spoken about themselves for 10, 15 minutes, they're probably going to go, well, anyway, what do you do? And the advantage of that is that you now have information that you can use. So you can talk about what you do in terms of how that relates to them and how your services can actually respond to some of the needs that they may have. And then when you do engage people in conversation, if you feel nervous about it, just talk about what you love doing. These networking events, they don't have to be all work and no play. you can just talk about a topic that you're passionate about and that the other person will enjoy hearing about. So you can tell them about why you love language, or you can talk about what you're passionate about that relates the event that you're going to. You can even, tell them some funny stories, tell them something memorable, because your aim is going to be to get them to remember you, essentially. So if you've got, I like using the example of, if you've got some great anecdotes about terrible translation errors in their industry, and what that led to, and the kind of problems that bad translation created, this is a way of just slyly suggesting why using a professional translator is important without saying it directly in so many words. And also just giving them a little bit of something interesting to discuss is going to be something that you can use again when you follow up with them. That's an important point. Again, the last point is that a sale with a new client is almost never going to happen after just a first meeting. So you give them your business card, you take theirs, you leave them with a good impression, you leave them with a smile, and then just a few days later, you follow up with an email. And in your email, you can make it quite a really nice, relaxed email. Just say, it was really great to meet you. Say something about what you talked about so that you're showing them that you were listening to them. And just insert a link towards your website, towards your online profile, to say, I'd love to keep in touch. Maybe we can work together in the future sometimes. So whether, you're at a networking event or really elsewhere, what you're often going to find yourself doing is having to present yourself or your business in a very short space of time. And this is often known as the elevator pitch. So I just thought it was worth saying a few things about how you can really best present yourself in the space of about 10 seconds. So think of this presentation, something that you're going to prepare, that you're going to have on the tip of your tongue when you meet someone. Think of it as being a short answer to someone asking you, what do you do? Even if they haven't asked you. And the way you should answer is to give them a brief summary of your business. And this can be, just when you're shaking someone's hand for the first time. It can be when you're standing up in front of a group to present yourself, or it can be just when you're chatting to someone in line for a coffee, for example. It should be always just, like I said, on the tip of your tongue, at the top of your mind, your little presentation. And your little presentation should be clear, and it should be memorable, and it should also use very plain language, not use our industry jargon, and it should be specific. And finally, you can think about adapting your introduction to your audience. So what I mean by this is that, for example, I tend to introduce myself as providing language services from English into from French into English, because that's what I do most of the time. But if I find myself in Italy, if I'm talking to, say, a hotel manager in Italy, then when I'm presenting myself, I might rather focus on the fact that I provide translation services from Italian and French into English. And, I might say something about previous experiences in the tourism industry. So you make sure that what you're saying about yourself and about your services is adapted as much as possible, whilst obviously remaining truthful to your audience. So whatever you say, make it either interesting or memorable or relatable to that person. So let's look at a few examples, because I think there's nothing better than a set of examples to show you what I mean. Some things I came up with myself, because these are invented people, but maybe you'll recognize yourself in them. So a lot of people tend to have a very basic way of introducing themselves, just saying, my name's Rosa, I'm a Cantonese to German translator. Or, hi, my name's Alfie, I translate from Spanish into Italian into Dutch. Or, I'm Elena, I'm an interpreter and I'm a legal translator. And that's fine, but that kind of tends to be an end to your presentation, to the conversation. What's a little bit better is giving somebody a bit more detail that's going to give the opportunity for them to bounce back. So let's see what I mean about this. So you can say instead, hi, I'm Rosa. I'm a Cantonese to German language services provider, and I work mainly with Hong Kong-based companies specializing in the retail sector. And when you say that, you're giving people a little bit more information so that they can come in and say, oh, how interesting, Hong Kong, I'd love to go there. Or, oh, Hong Kong, yeah, I do a lot of business there. What an interesting place. If you say to someone, I translate from Spanish and Italian into Dutch, I'm passionate about literary translation, and my other area of expertise is website localization. You're giving them a bit more information. You're allowing them to say, because lots of people love literature and lots of people love talking about what they read, they'll probably say, oh, wow, how interesting. What books have you translated? Or if you say, oh, well, I'm Elena. I actually work in Texas as a court-certified interpreter, and I'm a legal translator with a background in international law. Well, people again bounce back. Oh, Texas, what's Texas like? Or, gosh, court certified. What does it take to become a court certified translator? Tell me more about that. So again, you see how you're developing this introduction to give a little bit more information, more detail to allow people to kind of draw a conversation from that. And just to make it even better, my opinion is that you can make your presentation client-oriented. And by that I mean is tell them how you help others. So my name is Rosa. I'm a Cantonese to German translator. I run a business to allow Hong Kong retail companies to reach out to the Bavarian market. Or I translate children's books, and I also help Spanish and Italian companies create websites that really speak to a Dutch audience. Or, yeah, hi, I'm Elena. Actually, my job is assisting people in Texas with their legal disputes by interpreting for them in court and translating their legal documents. So as you can see, you're simply turning the coin a little bit, and you're showing them how you are helping your clients. So those people that you're speaking to happen to be a Hong Kong-based retail company, or someone who wants to make a Dutch website, or someone who needs court interpreting services. It's going to be immediately clear to them how you fit into their needs. So I hope that was clear. That's the main thing that I wanted to say about oral presentation in any case. And now I want to turn to look at how you can think about presenting your services when you're emailing potential clients and when you're sending your CVs to agencies. So just to give you a little bit kind of background, I put my CV on my website. For anyone who's particularly interested, they can go and download my CV. But I actually only ever send my CVs if I'm applying to agencies. So you should always look at an agency's website if you're interested in applying to work for them, because they will give you information there about how they want to be contacted. They'll have specific guidelines, and they may only want you to fill in an online form. They may not even want your CV, or if they do, they may want you to upload it in a particular format or onto their website rather than via email. So always check out what an agency wants first. But what we're going to look at here is just a sort of standard formatting with CV and things you really might want to think about including. The information here I actually got from a blog of a translation agency and consultancy company called IOLAR. And again, looking at the blogs of the agencies you want to work with are a useful way to find out what they expect from you. So this is some of the information that was, given by a translation agency from what they wanted to see on translator CVs. Obviously, contact information, the basics, your phone, your email, maybe Skype, however you like to be contacted. Social media presence, again, that's interesting. So if you do have a Prosy profile or LinkedIn profile, let them know, and clearly your website too. Then your educational background, your qualifications and certifications, anything that's going to be relevant to your skills as a language services provider, as a translator, or your skills that relate to a particular industry that you want to focus on. You want to mention clearly what your mother tongue is and what language pairs you work with. You'll be surprised that many people really omit this, forget to say this on their CV. And clearly list your service offering. So if you're not just translating in a particular industry, make sure that you mention everything else that you're happy to do. whether it's text revision, proofreading, transcreation, anything else. Tell them which CAT tools you use. It's always important, and your level of experience with each. You'll find that some agencies don't mind, and some agencies are very specific about which CAT tools they want you to work with. This agency also says to tell them when you're usually available. I'd say that's if you're not working full time, then it's important to let them know, you know, I only work Wednesdays to Fridays, and also your time zone, so they'll know when you can reach you. Your translation experience in detail. So obviously, this is not necessarily something that you've, you know, big paid work you've done. I know that the hardest thing when you're just starting out is to have something to show for yourself. So as I've said before, volunteer, you know, do volunteer translations for organizations that you really like, pick interesting text, blog about it, and then you can add this to your CV. It doesn't need to be, you know, obvious that it's something that was done for free. The important thing is that they can see that you translated, and hopefully even, if possible, show them where that work is. If it's online somewhere, that they can actually see it. But be specific and show them how what you've done previously relates to the specialization that you want to keep working in with them. And of course, if an agency asks for references, then you can list them at the end of your CV. Another point which I thought was quite interesting for many of you who are applying to international agencies that may be present in many countries is that in that case your CV should be in English, and I would stress proofread by a native English speaker. But you can also think about making a bilingual or even multilingual version of your CV. Okay, so just beyond this basic information, what are some of my personal tips, things I would, you know, suggest to everybody about crafting your CV? First of all, be concise. Use just a one-page CV because, frankly, nobody's got the time to read through more than that. Check out Canva, canva.com. It's this free software online, and you can make lots of stuff with it, including CVs that look really great. And I'll show you what mine looks like in a second. As I mentioned, get someone to proofread. Even if it's your native tongue, you know, you've probably likely made just a small mistake that you haven't realized. And especially if you're not writing in your native language, make sure that somebody, a native speaker, checks it out before you send it. In terms of the photo, I think this is really culturally specific. So in the UK and the US, I think you really don't want to use a photo on your CV. In France, that's generally standard. So it's up to you to figure out whether this is relevant to you or not. But if you do use a photo on your CV, pick something that looks professional. Don't just use some sort of cropped holiday picture or anything. And convert your CV to PDF. This is important because, well, on one hand, it's not alterable. So I think it's kind of more solid. Your CV is there, and it's no one can go in and just change it at their will very easily. And also, it looks the same on any platform, so the formatting isn't going to be all weird because somebody's opened it in a different program. And finally, just make sure that when you send your CV to an agency, it's got your full name in it, it's got an appropriate title, and it's not just called, you know, Resume 2017, because it will probably get lost. So what I wanted to show you here is how I changed my CV by using Canva, using this online tool. And my old CV looked like this. So don't worry if you can't read it. I've just used a French version to show you here because the point is to look at the visuals together, look at the way it's formatted rather than looking at the details of what's written in it. And that was my old CV, and I made a new one this year using the Canva tool. So just briefly, I think that, you know, from the old one, all black and white and very dense writing, I think it looks quite bland and boring compared to this new version that I've got that I think kind of breathes a lot more. It has essentially the same information, but I think just visually it looks much more approachable, and I think that the relevant information is far more easy to find in this new version. So let's take a look together at what I think you can do to make your CV a bit better and what Canva allows you to do. Let me just stress that this is just an example of one of the many, many ways you can structure your CV on Canva and elsewhere, obviously using other types of design tools. I don't think my CV is, you know, a sort of standard for how a translator CV should absolutely look, and I don't think it's the best out there. I'm sure there are other versions, but it's just an example to give you some ideas of how you can go about structuring yours. So what did I change? Why do I think this new way of presenting my CV is better? I've got this sort of website logo with sort of a logo. I mean, it's just what appears on my website, which also lists my main services. So it's the first thing you see the services I offer. I've used color as opposed to my old CV that was all in black and white. And I think that when you choose a color, it should reflect something that you want it to say. So, I mean, mine is kind of the colors that are used in my website, but I think it's a tone also that I hope reflects something like someone who's, you know, down to earth and reliable, you know, as opposed to having something bright pink, which might say someone, you know, who's very fun and exciting. I removed my photo from this CV. This is mainly because I wanted my French and my English CV to look the same, and I didn't think that having a photo was particularly relevant, especially since it's on my website anyway. The link to my website, as you can see, it's in a very prominent position, just under my name, and it's actually hyperlinked, so anyone who opens the PDF can click on it and it links into my website. I highlighted my main language pairs here. So although I translate from French, Italian, and Serbo-Croat, because more and more I'm translating essentially from French into English, I've highlighted those language pairs to hopefully show that. And I've included my nationality in this one. I think, I mean, I did this because it's quite standard in French CVs to do this. And hopefully it also shows people that, you know, I'm British and therefore my mother tongue is actually English. So just emphasizing this. And then I've got my contact information here on the right, just very clear and simple. And I've used these symbols to illustrate, you know, my postal address, phone number, and email. On Canva, you'll actually find that there's lots of visual aids that are really nice little ways to illustrate information you might otherwise be doing in writing. So it can make your CV just look a little bit more visually interesting. You can check those out. And then what I've got here in the middle is, well, right in the center, I've got my areas of specialization. So I have a few. You may only have one, and that's fine. I have a few that are quite similar, but they're also a little bit distinct. So I've separated them. And then in these three big blocks are the services I provide. So they're the same thing that's reflected up here: translation, proofreading, and subtitling. They're my main services. So for each, I have actually slightly different specializations. So what I mainly proofread in is not actually what I'm mainly translating. So that's why I've chosen this particular way of visualizing that information. And then on to the right, you have all the types of documents that I translate for each specialization. So the types of documents are highlighted, they're in bold. And then you have also underneath a list of different previous clients, the major clients that I've translated for in each of those specializations. Over here, I actually removed references that I had to previous jobs, previous non-translation jobs that I had in my other CV. I did this because as my experience grew in the field of language services, it felt less relevant to include what I've done before. And then here I've got my academic background, and it's simply less dense than previously because I decided to only list the titles of the courses and the university that granted the qualification, as opposed to going into the details about the different classes that I took. Here in the bottom, I've called it now professional development as opposed to personal strength. So I've just kind of altered a little bit the title of this last section. And in it, I included information about CAT tools and other online certifications, for example. That's the sort of information that you can add in this last section. Make it relevant, I would say, to your work. So even if you want to put a section about, you know, hobbies and interests. Well, I think, to me at least, those hobbies and interests should actually reflect something that you also translate in. They should be relevant to your work in some way. And finally, in the bottom, again, I've got little hyperlinks in the PDF to my profile on different professional and translation websites. So again, I don't think this is necessarily the best CV or the only way, certainly not the only way you can present your work. You can come up with something that's more relevant to you and to your services, but it hopefully will just give you some ideas about what you can do when you're drafting your CV with Canvas software. And I really urge you to take a look, because it's just very user-friendly software. You don't need to know very much to be able to create something like this on Canva in just a couple of hours. Okay, and just this last big thing that I wanted to talk about was your cover letter. So when you're contacting, this can be agencies or it can also be direct clients. Last time we talked about cold calling direct clients, and you know, you can think of this as just an email cold call. And how should you present your letter and what should be included? First of all, make it personal. I think this is important. Find out who's actually going to be reading your email message. So just do a minimum of research. If it's a translation agency, for example, find out the name of the owner of the agency, if it's a small one, or if it's a big agency, then it's probably going to be the vendor manager who you want to be contacting first. And if you're writing a letter in English, I would say use dear so-and-so rather than just saying hi. I think that it looks much more formal. But then, you know, whether you use their first name or their last name, it might actually depend on how they're presenting themselves on their website. If they have, you know, a very informal way of communicating, and if on the website all the people who work there introduce themselves in their first name, then by all means use the first name. I think that the important thing is to make your email look professional, but also personalized, and just show whoever you're writing to that you've made the effort to just make, you know, 5 minutes, take 5 minutes to do a bit of research. And then keep it short and sweet. So no more than 9 or 10 sentences, divided up into about 3 or 4 paragraphs. Remember that your job as a translator is to write. So if you can show that you can expertly draft a cover letter, then it's already going to be a point in your favor. So have a very basic but professional structure. So first paragraph, an introduction, just 1 or 2 lines about who you are, what your language here is. Then talk about your objectives, so why you're writing, and perhaps also how you found out about this company or this agency, and you know why you're writing specifically to them. In the second paragraph, you want to mention things like how many years of experience you have, what recent projects you work on, and again, if you have lots of years of experience in translation, that's great. But if you're just starting out, you can absolutely focus on what you've worked in before and how your industry specialization has actually helped you develop, you know, an understanding of terminology or communication style that's going to be really relevant to your translation work. And then you can mention things like maybe memberships to relevant associations. This second paragraph should be about giving more professional, more biographical information that reflects also your professional background. And then the third paragraph is a call to action of some kind, which we'll look at next. And then you just sign off with also your sort of e-signature, so somewhere to have a link to your website, some kind of online profile. And so this call to action, what's a call to action? Well, it's just an instruction to your reader. You're telling him or her what you want them to do next. So are you asking for information about their company? Maybe you're asking them just to tell you if they currently need translators in your language pairs, or you're asking them for information about the rates they provide to translators. You have to just tell them explicitly what you want them to do next. So if you just say, please see my CV attached, it's a bit weak. You're not telling them what to do next once they've seen your CV. Is it to email you? Is it to let you know if the rates reflect what they offer? You just need to be a bit more specific about how this relationship and this conversation should develop. And your call to action should be a way of humanizing yourself. So you can just include in this, again, a hyperlink to maybe your SmartCat profile or your LinkedIn profile, just somewhere where they can go and actually see your face and see a little bit more about who you are. And in this presentation letter, you can absolutely use formatting to emphasize your points. So don't make it too dull, don't make it all black and white and boring like my old CV used to look. You can use, for example, bullet points to highlight things like recent projects that you've done. And you're just making your cover letter easier to scan through or to read. You don't want it to look really standard and kind of boring. And yeah, the bullet point list, you can decide what you want it to say. It might be a list of your recent clients or a list of previous work that's relevant to whatever you're applying for. And you can use bold type to make important things in your letter really stand out, like your language pair or your area of specialization. And then lastly, is check your grammar and spelling. Of course, I tend to read these kinds of letters out loud. I mean, I read my translations out loud as well before I send them to a client. I think it's really useful to kind of hear something before you send it and not end up like this little guy on the right who sends something and then immediately panics because he's realized that he's messed something up. And you can also, of course, again, ask a native speaker to read your email. So when I'm contacting a big client for the first time, for example, if I'm introducing myself via email, I still get my husband to reread my French text. And it's important that if you're not a native English speaker, but you're writing in English, you, if possible, should really try and get your writing read by a native speaker, because you might be forgiven for kind of the occasional awkward or stilted phrases, but remember that your profession is language. So, of course, lots of people work in English and lots of things are forgiven in the international world because English is just a universal language, but not actually mother tongue for most people. You as a language professional are showing that if English, especially if English is one of your working languages, so you're translating from English, you should be able to compose a cover letter at least that's not going to have any clear errors or weird mistakes in it. Certainly, client's going to wonder if you can really work that well in a language if your cover letter isn't perfect. So this is a little example, again, of a good presentation letter that I picked up from another blog, from another agency called Red Line Language Services. So again, it's interesting that they actually put this information up online to say, this is what we consider a good cover letter. So again, they bring up this sort of stuff, personalized greeting, you've got highlighted text. So when I scan through this, I can see, okay, English to German translator, technical translator. I've got the essential information. Oh, what do they want? Oh, they want me to tell them whether we're accepting email applications. Okay, it's very concise. It's got a bulleted information, bullet point information about the work that they've done. 30,000 words. Oh, it's great. And again, just a nice hyperlink to their profile. Something else I would add personally, if I was writing to a translation agency, is my rates. I usually put them just in a sort of small table at the bottom of my email. And again, this is just if I'm contacting an agency, not if I'm contacting a direct client. But because there are so many different types of agencies working with so many different rates, that I'd rather give them this information immediately, so that generally if my rates are really considerably above what they're willing to offer, then that's fine. That that conversation ends there. They'll say to us, they might not reply at all. They'll say, thanks, but actually our rates are such and such, and then I'm not going to be able to work with them. Or often if they see that your rates are only slightly above what they usually offer, they will tell you this. They'll say, actually, you know, your profile looks great, but for this language pair, we usually offer X. And then it's up to you to see whether you want to negotiate that, whether you want to accept it, whether you want to add additional conditions. So that was the main things that I wanted to say about cover letters and presentation letters. Let's just look at a few more points that I wanted to go into about presenting yourself both online and offline. So first of all, once you've sent that first presentation email, you can't just sit back and relax and think that your work is over. I think we mentioned it, we talked about it quite a lot in the last webinar. What's really important is to follow up and follow up and follow up. Persistence is really going to be key here. You might want to set a schedule for yourself to keep getting in touch with people that you've written to, and keep reminding them that you exist until you have a firm reply from them one way or the other. And then in real life situations, you know, if you're going to networking events, for example, consider how your presence, so how you dress, how you act, how you speak, is going to affect what people will think about the services that you provide. And so I'm not saying, oh, you know, you've got a networking event on Friday, so you need to go out and buy yourself a new suit. But just, you know, maybe think about ironing the shirt you're going to wear, or, you know, getting that haircut that you've been putting off for the last 3 months or something like that. And when you're communicating online, again, be careful about how you express yourself. And again, this is no less a reflection of your services than when you're expressing yourself in real life. And I'm not just talking about how you say something, whether you're using correct grammar and correct spelling, but I'm also talking about what you say. Once it's out there, once it's online, it can probably be found again. So to be honest, I'm really unlikely to want to collaborate with a translator or recommend a translator who's rude about their clients on an online forum, for example. In saying that, don't try too hard to fit into a mold. So what I mean by that is, you know, be yourself. I think that on a lot of these online job forums, it's already hard to differentiate between people because there's a sort of format that's imposed. So when you are presenting yourself, just express yourself the way you would naturally. Don't feel like you've got to constantly project your business persona when you're just growing your freelancing initiative. Like, it's more important to come across as genuine. So making your CV and your website reflect something about who you are as a person, I think that really is actually draws me into to an online profile. And when you talk about your services, you know, be relatable. Again, be open about your capacities and your limitations as well. So, you know, don't pretend you can translate financial documents just because you're speaking to someone who works in the financial sphere if actually you've never worked or studied in that field. Be clear about what you do and what you can do. And then as you're starting to get to know a client or an agency, or even just as you're starting to use a freelancers forum, you can see how they communicate, and you can adapt your communication style to reflect theirs. So if they use very colloquial language, then you can do that too. If they use very visual language, you know, you can do that. How do they sign off? Do they say, you know, best, sincerely, have a nice day? You can, it's always good to actually reflect the way that people you're working with communicate. And finally, the last point is ask for clarifications from your clients and for advice from fellow translators and from freelancers in general. This applies to pretty much every aspect of our work. And it's going to remind your clients that after all, you are human. And I think that was pretty much it for me. Hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you're going to be feeling a bit more like this little guy. Now that you're ready to create, you know, a good way of presenting yourself, a good CV, a good 10-second presentation, you'll actually feel really satisfied with yourself once you put in the effort. And the cartoons that I used here, you can check them out. They're really wonderful little websites, introvertfreelance.tumblr.com and introvertdoodles.com. So check them out. I love them. They're really cute. As always, this is my call to action. Get in touch. It's always really fun to hear from you. And although we're going to be away for the summer, it's going to be, I mean, I'll be around and I'll be happy to pick up emails that you send me and chat to you online if you have any other questions about all of the topics that we've covered over the past 8 webinars. So that's it. That's my email, unadtranslation@gmail.com, and I'm unad21 on Twitter. And back to you, Bova, if you're still there. Oh, your sound's off. You need to switch your sound on.
Better like this?
Yep,
okay.
Now we can hear you.
It was very interesting, I must say. Of all the webinars, I think it was the most interesting for me. It just so happens I now study a lot about words and the way we use them. I just wanted to add maybe a few cents, 2 cents from myself. I'm now reading a book. It's in Russian, so maybe it won't make much sense for non-Russian guys here, but I will show it anyway. For the Russian guys, it is called. Its title is Write, Cut. That's it.
Yeah.
That's and the subtitle, not subtitle, but the secondary title is How to Create a Powerful Text. And it writes a lot about. The sun came out just in the right moment. Okay. Anyway, it has a lot of examples that show. Good usages and bad usages, and the main point is that if you want to write, you must cut out all the I'm trying to find out the euphemistic word, you know, for this. Cut out everything that doesn't belong there.
All the junk.
All the junk, yeah. So anything that doesn't bring sense, all the cliches, all the huge phrases like, I don't know, as we all know, blah blah blah, or something like this. Because for a very long time I was looking at the way people write, and I noticed that sometimes you just start looking and you don't realize what's wrong, but even before starting to read, you understand that it will be a lot of things, a lot of words for a little meaning, you know. I think maybe some of the next times we will even have a webinar on this. Maybe I will be also sharing some tips on our website, but anyway, most of the things you said also relate there, so focus on the client and on what really matters. Just my 2 cents. Anyway,
yeah. Let's
see what questions we have here. The top upvoted question is from Carol. I would like to know what is the best way to contact agencies or clients. We talked about this. Okay, so I don't like to exaggerate or show extra skills as a translator and offer my services as if they were the best in the planet. I believe I do my job correctly and deliver good quality projects, but I really prefer a more discreet approach. What should I do? Well, you talked about it, but maybe just reiterate to repeat, because it's important.
Yeah, maybe a few things. So as you mentioned, yeah, when you're reaching out to agencies and direct clients, I think it's 2 very different approaches. And to go into more detail, check out those 2 webinars that we've done about them. We really separated it into 2 webinars because I thought that it was important to make a distinction. And in terms of agencies, what you want is just to be professional. They're going to use your services depending on whether they need your specialization and your language pairs. And as you said, they're probably going to, they get so many applications all the time that they're going to see through, as you say, the junk. They're going to see through the unnecessary sort of, information if you're just talking yourself up too much. And I think that personally, if presentation letter kind of goes over the top and talks about being, I'm a high quality translator, I'm a highly reliable professional.
I think they have an eye on these things from their view. They just skip them.
Yeah, I think you skip them, and also just seems to me like almost suspicious. Like I don't, even that to me is not even a bonus point. I think the important thing when you're presenting your services is state the facts. State how many years of experience you have, what areas, whether it's translation-based or sector-based. State your qualifications, state your previous clients. You don't need to use, some kind of aggrandizing adjectives. What you want to tell them is just highlight everything that's positive about what you have to offer. And also, as I mentioned in this presentation, just be yourself. I think that people appreciate honesty. I don't think that that's maybe something that's not said enough. I think it's completely okay to be discreet and reliable. That's the kind of translator I'd rather be working with than someone who's just overhyping their services. Your work is what's going to speak for you. And so don't worry about trying to fit into this mold of saying like, oh no, translators communicate in this way, or freelancers tend to do this. Don't do something you're uncomfortable with, because that's going to come through. So just let your personality shine through the way that you communicate. And I think that's certainly my advice.
Great. So up next, how to, okay. Abel, I think the name's Abel, sorry if I missed it. There are two topics I'm concerned about. One is how to approach local and web clients. Okay, this we discussed. And two, how to discuss fees.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, as you mentioned, I think
that it's a touchy topic and they are a bit shy to even mention it, you know.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's in terms of approaching local clients. I know that it's sort of a subset of the topic of approaching direct clients, because when you're approaching local clients, you're more likely to do it by going to actual local events, so like the actual direct networking. And you might even want to organize events. I think that's a really great way to go about it. If you want someone to get to notice you, provide something. So, you know, find out who you want to be working with in your area, create an event and invite them, and build relationships. Again, as I mentioned, that's what you have to focus on, is getting people to know you, building a relationship with them. Work will come in time. Work isn't going to come from the first meeting, but it will come eventually as they get to know you. And I think local events, I mean, getting local clients is great, because I think that direct relationship when someone meets you face to face is actually really important, and it's a more surefire way of getting direct clients than emailing them. And in terms of fees, I think that, again, there's two different approaches, whether you're talking about agencies or direct clients. So agencies, as I said, be upfront. The first time you contact an agency, tell them what your rates are. You know, calculate what rates you need, tell them what they are, and be upfront about it. And as I said, if they're not happy to accept them, if they work for far lower, then that's not the agency for you. There are thousands of agencies out there. You'll find the ones that are willing to pay you what you need. And in terms of direct clients, I think that it depends on whether you're applying a per word rate or not. What I would say is that in any case, that's not going to be the first thing you talk to them about. Once you've discussed the kind of services you provide and what they need, and if they start asking about rates, you just say to them, just let me know what you need translated, I'll give you a quote. Get the documents first. You need to find out as well what kind of documents they are. It might be very technical and you need to charge more, or they might have very short deadlines and you need to charge more. But once you've seen the documents, that's when you're going to send a quote. You send a quote and you set your rate. And then it's normal to talk about payment. I mean, we're providing a service that they need, and you can judge based on their response. If they're a little bit reluctant, then be prepared to offer a little bit of a discount. I've got no problem in offering a 10% discount for new clients, for example, because once they've used your services, they're more likely to come back to you. They're more likely to see the quality of what you're offering and how it's helping them. But again, you know, don't work for pennies. You want to give a bit of a discount the first time, but you need to also be able to justify your services. So if someone says to you, oh gosh, that seems expensive, you need to explain to them how your services are actually going to be far more valuable to them than what they cost just to pay you. So explain to them the value of providing good quality language in whatever it is, and selling their own products, for example.
Yeah, you also mentioned that you can give a discount for the first order because some people think that that the price you will give first is the maximum you will get, so you will not be able to increase it afterwards. I think it's not so, and you can be honest about it. If you do this first order, you calculate your hourly rate, you can easily come back to the client and say that, okay, it was a bit harder or a bit easier, so you can easily either increase it or decrease it. After all, what matters is how much you earn per hour, right?
Yeah.
Don't try to earn all the money in the world, as the Russian saying goes. So sometimes you will feel the urge, even especially for a new client, to name some high rate, also maybe to show your importance and your expertise. But sometimes, yeah, you must be flexible, I think.
Mm.
Okay, next one. Carolina asks, I'm always concerned about cultural differences I might not be aware of. For example, in Argentina, we are quite relaxed at the time of a telephone conversation or even in a video chat, but I would not like to appear to be too informal. What would you suggest regarding different countries?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I find there's quite a difference between just US and the UK, for example. Obviously, just because it's the same language doesn't mean it's the same way of communicating. And in the US, people tend to be very informal, very directly, immediately. Whereas in the UK, you do maintain a much more formal way of writing for a very long time with your clients. And I think the main thing is just to adjust to them. So find out how they communicate first, if you can, if in any way before sending them an email. I would say err on the side of caution by being more formal than you think you might need to be to start off with. But I often, write a very formal email, dear so-and-so sincerely, and they'll reply to me and say, oh, hi, Anna, thanks for getting in touch, have a nice day. And then the next email I write to them, I will use their tone. So don't worry so much about the first point of communication. Just make sure that as when you call them, listen to how they're talking, adapt yourself to them. It's not even just necessarily a cultural difference. It can also just be how people personally communicate. And within one single organization that I work with, I email and I call a person very often where we use the formal French, the vous, and I have another person who within about a day started using the informal tu with me. And so it's very awkward if one person is using one level and the other one is using the other. So I just simply know, okay, with that person, I'm using the formal language, with the other one, and it's the same organization, they work in the same office. So yeah, just bounce off people, make them feel comfortable by using the language and the style that they're using. Once you get to know them, it's really easy to do.
Yeah, and just when you start, you're not living in an isolated world, so feel free to ask your colleagues for some advice if you're going to write for the first time to a Japanese client. Okay, about the Japanese clients, maybe everyone knows that you should be extra formal and so on, but if you're writing, I don't know, to South Africa or something, there's this green button under the video. You can click it and come to our forum, our community website. Feel free to ask any questions if you have any doubts. It's a bit of a product placement here, but I think it was fitting.
Yeah, we're going to be away all summer, so in terms of the webinars, so join us in the forum, and we'll hopefully keep up the chats and keep in touch with you in the forum if you've got any other questions. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I didn't even notice how we reached the 1 hour limit. So let me quickly see if we have a lot of questions. We have some. What, Una, are you hard booked for the next after 2 minutes or?
No, it's all right. I can stay on a few more minutes.
I often take on translations from individuals, either online or offline. How can I be convincing about my non-documented experience? What do you think? It's
Sorry, I didn't understand that question.
Zed takes translations not from companies, but from individuals. So yeah. He cannot document this experience, although I don't really see how he cannot document it. I mean, you can always have feedback and references and these kind of things.
Yeah. So I didn't understand that question at the start. Yes, so obviously you don't have a nice company logo that you can put on your website to say I've worked with such and such a company. But it's going to be, yeah, as you mentioned, obviously the first obvious element is feedback. Get their feedback, get their references from them for your work. That's going to be extra important because you can't project them as being big company clients. So getting them to say something nice about what you do is important. And what you'll realize as well is that those people are going to be often more valuable to you in getting further clients, because you're going to be getting them through word of mouth. So individuals know a lot of other individuals, and those other individuals may at some point also need similar services. And so as long as you've got a good, you've had a good working relationship with them, they're going to be advertising your services more readily probably than your corporate clients. So you don't, if you're working with individuals, then you don't even need to be putting that, you're not sending them CVs. If that's how you're getting your work, then you're not sending out CVs to, I don't know, either big companies or agencies. So you shouldn't be worrying about that so much.
Makes sense. Claudia asks, what about a web page or a website? Which is better, and what must it have? Probably means what must be present in it.
I think it's more important to just have something online somewhere than so much the content. I think the content is going to be the basics, and anything you haven't managed to say on your CV. I mean, literally, your the page where you are in your online, whether it's one static page or a big website, it's going to reflect the essential information that's on your CV, and then maybe some added elements like references from your clients and things like that. But the important thing, I think, that you can obviously just have a landing page somewhere like Prosy or SmartCat, but something to remember is that if you send people there, they're immediately on a platform with hundreds of other people who are providing the same services. So you're immediately showing them the competition. Whereas if you have your own website somewhere, your own landing platform that you put, send your potential clients to, they just see your information. And for me, it's just about quality rather than quantity. You don't need to worry about putting lots of things out there. Just write, the essentials, and make it, again, reflect who you are. Make your website just reflect your personality. If you need more ideas, just check out other translators' websites. Go online, see what other people do, see what you like, and do something similar or do something different because you want yours to stand out. So see what everyone else is doing and then do something a bit different.
Good. So, well, I guess that's all that's related to the topic of this webinar. There's one question in the chat. Let's make it the last one. Let me see. Sarah asks, I have a regular customer. These last few months, he's given me more to do, but he's making me work for much less and expecting me to send back my work much sooner. I'm starting to have health issues. Should I discuss it with him? You're almost like a TV doctor, right now. So what would you?
Yeah, agony aunt, I know, this is my new persona. First of all, well, I'm intrigued when Sarah says he's making me work for much less. What does that mean? What do you mean he's making you? At some point, you've accepted a condition that you weren't happy with, and you shouldn't ever, accept a condition you're not happy with. And if he's asking for tighter deadlines, you need to say tighter deadlines imply higher fees. It's all about setting limits for yourself. And I know that sometimes it can feel like one client is really important and you need to, respect their every wish because you're desperate to keep them. But in the long run, it's going to be negative, as you're finding out. I mean, I don't know if your health issues are a result of sort of stress and being overworked, but you have to impose these limits on yourself because it's going to be negative in the long term. And you need to get a wider variety of clients. It's never going to be, it's not going to be a good idea to have just one big client, because you're a freelancer, you're not their employee. And you cannot rely on one service provider on one client, because you as a services provider don't want to be there to serve their every whim. You need to be in control of your time and in control of your life and your work-life balance, because you have to grasp the free and freelancer. This is why I do this job, because I'm free. I'm free to work how I want and when I want, and saying no is a part of that. Learning to say no is really important, and sometimes you lose out, and you might lose out on a job or a client, but in the long term, you're going to create a business that's going to make you happier. I hope that helps, Sarah. And if you've got any any more specific questions, come to the forum. I'd be happy to chat to you more about sort of your specific situation.
Sure, right. I think it was a great piece of advice for everyone, for all of us, and a good way to end this last webinar in this season, which lasted for 7 months, I think.
Yeah, it was really long.
Yeah, next season, Una and myself, we are thinking of something exciting for you. We don't have anything set in stone yet, but hopefully we will put it to a new level, and we are looking forward to seeing all of you in September.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming along. It's been really fun to get feedback from everybody and answer your questions and think about these different issues together. It's helped me really grow as a freelancer and as a translator as well. So I really want to keep up this relationship with SmartCat and keep doing some new and fun and exciting stuff with all of you all soon. And yeah, in the meantime though, happy holidays. I'm going to go away for summer and take some time off, and I hope that all of you will as well, because rest is important. Rest and holidays are going to make you your brain function better.
Except for those in the southern hemisphere, I guess the guys have winter, alas. But anyway.
Oh, it's winter holidays. Doesn't matter. I'll take holidays in winter as well.
Go skiing somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, it was great, and see you all. Thank you, Una. Thanks everyone, and see you sometime. See you online.
Bye, yeah, guys. Bye. Take care.
Bye. Take care. Ta-ta.